But the first date I have is Monday, March 8th, 1971. Does that ring a bell?
March 8, 1971. So that feels like a Pedro Morales Madison Square Garden date, but it doesn't ring a bell to me.
To the overall zeitgeist, and I threw you a curveball from the first one. It's Ali Frazier 1.
Oh, okay. I now absolutely right. I was thinking pro wrestling. Well, I absolutely remember everything about Ali Frazier 1. Yeah.
Okay, so you would have been how old?
I'd have been 11.
This fight?
I'd have been 11, and I remember everything about that night. Yes.
Okay, so I think it's kind of the first thing that stands out to me is why would they do a fight on Monday night? Like
it didn't matter back then. It didn't matter. That's the answer. I don't know why it was on a Monday night, but when in that era, it's like whether it was the World Series or whatever, the Friday, it didn't matter. You just did it, and people watched. The world stopped, especially for that one. The world stopped. Yeah, not that this has anything to do with it, but have you ever seen the program for the first Ali Frazier fight?
You mean the physical, like, magazine?
They sell programs at the arena, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The only reason
I haven't seen it.
Okay. What's in my other lifetime, what's so interesting is like on one of the pages, I think it's one of the back pages, it's like they have a thing of like superstars that have performed here in Madison Square Garden, and it's all these superstars, right? But so Willis Reed, who obviously you would remember was the star center of the Knicks at that time.
Yep.
And right next to it was Joni Weston and Ann Calvello in the Ali Frazier program as superstars that had performed in Madison Square Garden.
I remember when I went to Madison Square Garden for the first and only time so far was to see that New Japan ROH show. Just walking the halls and seeing all of the photographs and stuff was really cool because that building is, there's just everything that has happened at that building. So this, would you think that as far as like the most famous shows to happen at that building, where would Ali Frazier 1 fall?
Number 1.
Okay. So that's I mean, that's amazing because it was now, what did we just hit the 50th, right?
Yeah. 50th anniversary of it just a couple months ago. Yeah.
So
I talked to Mark Ratner and I talked about this. It was actually the week Ali died. And we were kind of like going through like where that stands on the pantheon of sports. And we, you could make a case for in the United States. I'm not saying worldwide, but in the United States for the one Super Bowl game, the Jets and Colts game, which is right around the same period, like maybe that's 69-ish, 70. But God, I would think that, and in boxing, and he's a boxing expert, he was like, oh, that's number 1. And because I go like, bigger than like Lewis and Schmeling, because that was gigantic in its own way, everybody listening on the radio and stuff. And he goes, no, Ali Frazier's number 1. And we both kind of thought that if there was something of that magnitude today, that it would do, and we're throwing out fake numbers, but we were figuring like 9 million pay-per-view buys. 9 million, 10 million, something like that. I mean, it was so much bigger than, it was even bigger than Ali and Foreman, which was also gigantic.
Yeah. So I think I want to say that both guys got 2.5 million for this fight.
Yes, they both got 2.5 million or maybe 5. No. I think it was 2.5 at the time. And then Ali was getting up to 5 and then he was supposed to get 6 for Inoki, but he ended up getting 2. Because when he went with the Inoki fight was going to be his biggest payday of his career at 6 because the record was 5. So maybe that was the Foreman fight where he got 5. Would that make sense? Maybe. Yeah.
All right, hold on to the Inoki thought because I want to talk to you about that one too. Okay, so this fight is I just listened to a really good podcast, sort of the building up of this fight. And you know that Ali and Frazier, at least in thinking about, I mean, obviously it's the clear fight to make when Ali can start fighting again, because Joe Frazier comes in and wins his world title. But it just still amazes me to this day how long it took for Ali to get cleared to fight. Like,
unbelievable.
It sounds like the dumbest thing in the world 50 years later, but was it that? I mean, did people think of it back then as like so silly that he couldn't even get licensed?
People hated him so much that it wasn't as much like the people backing Ali at that point were the minority. They were right, but they were the minority. So it was not, I mean, there were people who just thought that, like, you know, he should never fight again. And you know, and they were mad that he got to fight. And then they were mad that they were really, that's why, like, I think that's the fight that sort of started flipping Ali as a babyface to some people. And then the Foreman one flipped him completely.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, I was an Ali fan, but it was definitely a lonely place to be in 71 because most people really wanted Frazier to beat him and shut him up. I mean, that's what the whole mentality was shut up Ali and you know, and just everything, the way I'm in the media, like with the exception of like Howard Cosell, who was a big Ali backer, you did not find a lot of Ali backers in the media.
So the negativity comes from both his refusal to go to the Vietnam War, but also he's also changed religions at this point. And
I think it's both. For sure. It's the
right.
changing of the name, the Muhammad Ali name itself, because he started as Cassius Clay, and that's the name people wanted him to be because that's the first name. So when you did that, like all of those guys, like when Lou Alcindor became Kareem Jabbar, at the first generation of those guys were all viewed very negatively by white society. You know, in years later, you know, that dissipated, but those two in particular, but Ali far more than Kareem, you know, that was a big part of it. But the draft dodging thing was definitely gigantic at the time because, you know, he is maybe the most famous athlete in the country and certainly top tier. And he's, you know, doing something, and he's saying, like, I've got nothing against the Viet Cong. What did they ever do to me? Mm-hmm. And they were like our mortal enemies. We're taught, because that's how it was in wars in the 70s and the 60s. You know, that whoever we're against are the, you know, whether it's Russia or Vietnam, they're the bad guys.
Yeah.
So it's like he sided with the bad guys, the Viet Cong, against his own country. You know, even though God knows the indignities that he must have suffered. Yeah. I mean, winning a gold medal in the Olympics and, you know, restaurants not serving him at the same time, things like that he had to go through. So it's like I can see from, you know, his perspective, you know, all of this. And, you know, but yeah, you know, he was definitely in white society. Ali was the bad guy of all bad guys. And then years later, he was the exact opposite. He was you know, everyone accepted him. I think maybe some people didn't at the end, but almost everyone did. I mean, there were definitely older people who probably stuck to that. But I know that, like, with my friends, you know, when Ali fought Foreman, Ali was like the super baby face, and pretty much to most people he was, maybe because,
and a giant underdog.
He was a giant underdog, and then also the and maybe Foreman, which is funny because Foreman was a Bay Area guy, but
Hayward, right?
Yeah, Hayward, yeah, and yeah, he trained here and trained sometimes with Rocky Johnson. You know, Rocky Johnson would work as sparring, and Rocky Johnson was a sparring partner of Ali too, but. The you know, it was, I think, Foreman being like such a scary guy and what Foreman did to Frazier, it really, you know, people were just thinking that he's going to kill Ali because look at what he did to Frazier. And then when Ali beat him, just the nature of that's what really flipped Ali, but it was, and the fact that he did it through, he beat the unbeatable guy through rope-a-dope and everything. I mean, that was viewed like 100% babyface to almost everybody. Just the nature of this guy who had who's thought to have no chance. It was like a joke fight, just for, I mean, it was a big marquee fight, but people thought that Foreman was absolutely unbeatable, and Ali beat him.
So would you have been able to follow this live?
Ali Frazier, so it was only on closed circuit, and I was 11 years old, and the idea of whatever it was, paying $25 for closed circuit just was not something that we would do. So what I remember on that night, me and all of my friends, and I mean all, we were in the street around the corner from my house where most of my friends lived. In fact, it would have been right next door to Liz Economy's house, and which is a name that Garrett knows. Who's like Biden's secretary to China or something? I forget. I should know. But anyway, so we're all. She hadn't lived there then. She wasn't living there then though. But we were all in there listening to our transistor radio. To the AP, it would have been Jim Eason, who was a talk show guy very popular talk show guy in San Francisco, KGO radio. So he would basically have the AP round by round coverage. So, at the end of each round, there would be the summary of the round. So it's like round 3 and go through like move by move what's going on in the round. And round 3 goes to whatever. It's a tight fight too,
Yeah.
And we would, like, if it was Ali's round, we were all excited. And if it was Frazier's round, we were all down, like that. And we went through the whole fight, and it was feeling from the AP report that Frazier was winning. And then he knocked him down, I think it was in the 15th round, and won the fight. And, that was, but yes, I remember that is a memory, that's one of my, most etched in memories of me. And, there's 24 of us sitting there listening to the transistor radio report of round by round, the description. And it was like the world stood still, and the parents were all in their houses, listening to the radio as well for the round by round. I mean, it was just like,
What show was on between the round by round? Because that show got great ratings on that night.
In what sense? What do you mean by that?
Well, so what's playing in between the scoring
round
highlights?
by round, I mean, like it would take him a minute and a half to read, and the round by rounds were coming in every 4 minutes.
So there's like music in the middle or something?
No. It was sports talk. No, not sports.
Oh, okay.
It was a news talk show.
Got it.
He did news talk, and so I mean, he would just talk about the fight, between the reports. The new reports in for this round. So that's all they talked about was the fight during that period.
Wow.